Dogs? Wait, both my dogs in the screen there.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm first off, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for bearing with me. I had so many technical issues, but you know what? No excuse. It is what it is. Welcome back to the uh welcome back to the grief empowerment theory. The grief empowerment theory is clearly is designed to show people that no matter what you go through, no matter what challenges you happen to have, you can reconvert that negative energy into a fuel to work to your advantage. And today, I have an amazing guest with me. Her name is Michelle Ann Collins. Michelle has gone through a very challenging circumstance. And from there, she has transformed that challenge of that grief to be able to author two books. She's a speaker, she's a yoga instructor. Her name, again, Michelle Collins. And before I go any further, because I will blow her up to high heaven, Michelle, please go right ahead and talk to the audience about yourself.
About myself. How long was this show going to be?
You take all the time you need. It's your show.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the most important thing about me is that I try to be an example to others for what you can do with pain and trauma and difficulty. And I teach my main focus now is teaching mindfulness and getting people to meditate and learn about how to really sit with their feelings. And that has been a really big impact on my healing journey from losing my husband to suicide and many other grief times in my life. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now, John.
Well, what's interesting is, as a mindfulness coach, your biggest thing is getting people to understand that they have to take control
Mhm.
of the circumstances. And once they take control of the circumstances, then they can start creating solution. And that's a very interesting thing because there are so many people that truly believe that the world is controlling their life and that they're just
Yeah.
simply a cog in the machine.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to disagree a little bit just with how you said that. We we often don't have control over our circumstances, where we live, where we were born, the color we were born with, any of that. But what we have control over is our response to it. And that's where the mindfulness practices come in. You can respond with anger, with self pity, with a feeling of helplessness, or you can, like you were saying, take control. You can respond to your circumstances with feelings of self empowerment or compassion or gratitude, even.
You know, I think you're right. And taking a more stoic approach to this, it allows you to look at the fact that, you know what? Again, you cannot control the outside environment. You can't control anything that happens. What you can control is your mind and the way you think about it.
Exactly.
That that that's the key in anything, but that's also the most difficult thing for people to understand. How do you approach having your clients develop that mentality?
Well, I approach it by asking a lot of questions and inviting them to say and at the end of a sentence. For example, I work with a lot of people who have experienced suicide loss, and there's a lot of if onlys, right? If only I hadn't hung up the phone, if only I had made one more of his favorite dinners, if only, and so I try to say, what I try to do is have my clients open their minds just a little bit to the possibility that it could be and. For example, if I had made him his favorite dinner and he still died by suicide. And when you open that up, it can help release the guilt and the shame that comes along with a suicide loss. And you can also do, I feel so guilty and I still love him. So you can add these things on. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to help people find their inner calm, because as a suicide loss survivor, you're usually spending a lot of time beating yourself up about what you could have done, what you should have done. And so I try to offer people an alternative to changing the past, which we all know we can't change the past, but suicide loss survivors and many other loss survivors spend a lot of time in I wish I had, if only, coulda, shoulda, woulda. And so improving your relationship with the past, first accepting it, and then looking for the gifts. Looking for the gifts is kind of high level, um, but it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of turning your attention towards what's neutral in the situation or what's good in the situation, not just paying attention to the awfulness of the experience.
Shifting the narrative
Mhm.
is really appropriate because if you don't, like you said before, you will stay anchored to that past circumstance. And then the longer you stay anchored, the more you justify your circumstance. And once you make
Yeah, good
that
point.
justification, you'll tell yourself that I'm responsible for what has happened. I am responsible because I didn't do the things that needed to be done. I love the fact that you include the word and in everything because what you're doing is, like you said, releasing yourself of the pain and the guilt. The truth of the matter is that the person that committed the act was determined to do it under any circumstance. You could not have changed that. What you now must understand is that since the action has happened, going forward, here's how I want to honor the memory of
Exactly. Yeah.
the person. You know,
Yeah.
I'm I can't I'm not gonna sit there and fault them for what has happened. I'm not gonna fault myself for the fact. I'm going to take the time that I have to honor the loss. Because
Right.
even though the person passed in a tragic situation, there was time that we had together. There was time that I learned something incredible. There were
Right.
times that we had precious moments.
Yeah,
Like
and
you said,
that's the control that you're talking about. That's the taking control of the situation. It's taking control of your interaction with and your response to what happened. I can be upset, I can cry, I can be angry, I can lay on the couch and binge watch or drink or take drugs and just try to numb the pain, or I can, with work and support from a coach, or a therapist or both, um, get to the point where I can say, okay, this happened, and now I need to create my new life out of the ashes of this fire. And another thing that we can do as coaches that's really helpful is just listening. It's
yes,
hard to hear someone's story when the story includes these great tragedies, suicide loss. And usually suicide loss doesn't come out of the blue, right? You've had maybe some scary stuff leading up to it, right?
Very
So
true.
being able most people can't sit and listen to the entire story. So I always encourage people, just speak it or write it, move it. And as a coach and a supporter of people who have suffered suicide loss, just sitting and listening can be one of the best supports you can offer.
That's absolutely true because sometimes just allowing a person to be able to get the challenges off of their chest, off of their back, and to have someone who is a empathetic, compassionate, supportive listener, not somebody that's going to look to fix them or solve the problem or create solutions,
Right,
just somebody
right.
to listen. I want to go back to something you talked about before because it's my philosophy, which is interesting. When you talked about the high level of being able to kind of transform the grief into a gift, it's interesting because the reason why I wanted to circle back to that is because it's truly the only way we are able to effectively walk past or walk through the challenges. Once it's, I tell my clients all the time that the things that happen to you, that's not the gift. The gift comes from what you learned from the circumstance, how that circumstance affected you to make and create change. Because loss, grief, no matter how it happens, whether it's a suicide, natural causes, or job loss, what that means, it's a form of change. Change is the only constant in life, but it's a form of growth. And you can be resistant to change, but change is going to happen.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
yeah, even in your indecision to grow, you're still growing. You're now like a concrete weed, a weed that's growing out of the concrete. It's still growing,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's not, you know, but it's choking the situation. Or you can be a concrete rose because roses can grow in any environment as well. And once that happens, the shift in your mind is, you know what? Circumstances happen, situation we're in is what it is, but I'm going to find that 2.0 version of myself.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be a rose that grows through this concrete.
Yeah, I think that all of these challenges that happen, any challenge, it doesn't even have to be a great loss. It could be, running late for something.
Yes.
Uh, that's a challenge. How am I
It
going
happened
to
today.
manage? I wasn't even thinking about that, but you're right. And, I'm so good at it now that, like, everything that happened with our tech stuff this morning, I was like, "Oh," I just made a shift. I changed my schedule around a little bit. Did not have any negative emotions, any stress, nothing. The old me would have been like, "We're not on. It's,
Yeah.
whatever time." And so these growth opportunities come in all sizes, all packages. And now it's to the point where I go with the flow. And I know I can't control things like traffic. And, even when my GPS says go around this way, and then I go around this way and it's gridlocked and my time is looking 5 minutes later, it's like, well, here I am. You know
Right.
what I mean? Just
The,
here I am.
the
I'm
truth,
I'm sitting in traffic, and my reaction to what's happening is my opportunity to grow. I can take a breath, I can use it as an opportunity to phone a friend that maybe I haven't had time to call. I can sing to music on my car stereo, instead of sitting there and just, working up. Uh, there's no control. You don't have control over it. You'll get there when you get there.
You know what? What's interesting is creating opportunity out of circumstance is always a better circumstance, a better situation than being upset over it. See, the reality is the situation will be what it is. You being upset over it is not going to advance the situation. It's only going to advance your
Right.
blood pressure. You know,
That is exactly right, right? And so you have an opportunity when you meet a challenging situation to, the resistance, the anger, all of these things cause stress and that damages your health. So if you make a choice to breathe, control, and go to gratitude, oh, now I have time to phone a friend, or, oh, I'm grateful that my car has air conditioning and I'm not outside sweating it, something
right?
like that.
Exactly.
Every time you can make that shift in attitude, is you're strengthening your ability to control your life, your outlook. Everything about your life is based on that ability.
Now, Michelle, let me ask you this. You're also a yoga instructor. And how do you fuse the aspects of getting people to be able to calm themselves with using yoga? Because, from my understanding, yoga and other forms of mindfulness, like meditation and things of that nature, are allowed. They're designed to calm you. But what's interesting is things like yoga. It, it's putting yourself in these extreme positions. You know,
Yeah,
meditation. It's forcing yourself to sit down in a world that wants you to move every second. How do you get people to understand that doing these difficult things will actually bring calm to their world?
that's a great question. And it's a constant reminder while I'm teaching, right? When this pose is challenging to you, try to take a deep breath and hold it just another second or two. Find your edge and then calm yourself and go a little bit further. And each of those opportunities, or if you're standing in a difficult balance pose and you start to, breathe and center, almost always pulls you back into the balance when you're trying to fall out or at risk of falling out. So it proves itself so many times throughout class that when you center and calm with taking the deep breath, that's almost always it. Sometimes if you're in a challenging balance pose, it's, making sure you're focusing on something in the right area in front of you. um, that you can hold it, whatever it is, you can hold the pose. But then when you're off the mat, say again, stuck in traffic, like I was talking about earlier, can you hold it? Can I be with this? I have my breath. What else do I need? I can take a deep breath. I'm still here sitting in my car. I'm going to choose not to get all angry and reactive, and I'm going to choose a healthy response. And that's important in yoga too. I'm talking about expanding your tolerance for pain in yoga, not bad pain, but a
Understand.
challenge.
Right.
But also being aware that, okay, if I hold this pose any longer, I'm doing damage to my body, because there's a lot of yoga practices that ask people to do things that their particular body shouldn't be doing. And so it's mindful awareness of your limits. When maybe you reached your limit sitting in that traffic jam. So the smart, wise thing to do is to actually pull over, stand up and stretch. you know, there's an amount of challenge you can take, and then there's, relieving yourself from the situation until you can regroup. So that's the coming out of the pose, taking a breath, and then maybe revisiting the pose if that's the most beneficial thing to you. So ultimately, it's increasing your window of tolerance for challenge and knowing when you have gone past your window of tolerance and you're about to lose it, and shifting the situation, whatever it takes to shift the situation.
And that's interesting because this is taking this into, like you said, other scenarios. What this is allowing you to become solution oriented versus being problem plagued. Like you said, going back to the example of the person in traffic, it's traffic is a daunting thing and it can drive people crazy. But if you take a second, pull over, like you said, stretch, hey, you might see a donut restaurant or something.
Or
You
even
know,
cry, don't forget about how
right.
good it is to move emotions. I mean, if you're really angry, there's a healthy way to express it. Anger doesn't You don't have to just breathe and get rid of your anger. You can stand up and do, like I have learned in grief yoga, express it. You can bang on the steering wheel, hopefully not hurt your hands. um,
Right.
do something to get the energy of that anger that's building up out, because sometimes deep breathing can really do it, right? You're like, all right, I'm back. And sometimes you are so far outside your window of tolerance that you have to, you know, so, but knowing that you have these tools to be able to release that pent up anger energy, so you do it in a way that doesn't harm you or other people. I mean, you've seen on TV or on online all the videos of angry drivers getting in accidents. You
Exactly.
know, all if they just had some mindfulness practice, that wouldn't happen.
Well, what's interesting is we live in a world where it's a challenge to take responsibility because no one wants to feel responsible. They A lot of people unfortunately acquaint responsibility to blame, and they are two different things. The problem is, like you said, that person using the car scenario again. If that person is in traffic and ends up getting into an accident, all of a sudden, it's clearly the fault of the world,
Right.
not the responsibility that maybe they were angry before the accident happened and they might have been more it might have been beneficial to pull over for a second just to regather yourself.
Right. And that's a mindfulness practice. If you're not aware of your anger, then your anger can control you. If you know how to meet anger, okay, anger is happening in me, right? I am feeling angry. And then one of the tools of mindfulness is awareness of the body, right? So I am feeling anger. And then that's the big aha moment, right? Not, you don't go straight from anger to expression of anger. I am feeling angry. And then you go into the body. My chest is tight. My pulse is racing. I'm sweating. I want to hit something, but you're aware of it. Instead of having it control you, you can choose a tool, a breath, an expression, a physical expression. You can go for a little sprint, jump up and down, whatever it is you need to do, so that that anger does not cause damage to you or the people around you.
It's interesting because what we can do, we have so much. There is a locus of control that we have. We are we have been led to believe that that we don't have any control, that society is controlling every aspect. Because, you know, it's easy to believe that we're being controlled because there are so many people, the person right next to them, their friends, their family, they have that same belief. So because they
Hmm.
have that same belief, they feel kind of crazy or out of pocket if somebody like yourself or myself is telling them, no, you have control. You
Yeah,
know,
that's why it takes, incremental steps to go from people who feel like they're a victim, people who feel they have no self-empowerment at all, that the rule, like you were saying, that society rules and you have no control, to learn. And it's one breath at a time, one challenge at a time. And sometimes we fail, and also accepting those times that we fail, accepting those times that we feel really upset. Oh man, I got really mad and I said something I regret, and being aware of that, and maybe even able to repair the situation with that awareness.
what 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 it comes down to is the fact that it's like what I said before. Unfortunately, many people make the mistake of not taking responsibility for an action and instead wanting to acquaint the action with being blamed, and then they don't want to be blamed. So
Right.
they won't repair the circumstance.
Right,
Instead,
they'll escalate it
right.
instead.
Instead,
Right.
I mean,
It's not
literally,
my fault, it's your
your
fault.
fault.
I'm gonna blame you because I can't handle looking inward and figuring out why I'm struggling. Yeah, it's so much easier to blame than to feel responsibility, to feel shame or guilt or whatever it is, that regret for what you did. It's somebody else's fault. It's society's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's the neighborhood I was raised in's fault.
And the thing is, see, all those things are factors, but
Mhm.
the factor doesn't create the circumstance. You do. For instance,
Yes. Wait,
I
I want to take a pause on that one and
yeah,
just make sure that it sinks in with the audience. The factor doesn't create the circumstance. Oh, I can't remember exactly what you said.
no,
That's why I want to
the
say it
factor
again.
the factor doesn't create the circumstance. You know, you create your circumstance. I always I talk about Tina Turner. Tina Turner is from Nutbush, Tennessee. And where is Nutbush? You know, but she discovered that she could sing. And even though she went through some challenging situations in her life, it turned out to the fact that she has become a legend in the music business, a legend. You know, it's interesting. I recently was listening to Morgan Freeman talk, and Morgan Freeman talked about the fact that he knew so many people back in his hometown that just stayed there. And Morgan Freeman's thing was, well, the bus runs every day.
Mhm.
Why don't
Yep.
you get on it? You know, and the fact that we as humans will find, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, what we were talking about. We will find a way to apprehend us and then allow that apprehension to act as some type of justification for why it can't happen. Now,
Mhm.
the reality is these things are hard. but it's not any harder than just delaying the process and having it morph into, like you said, regret. Once it morphs into regret, once it morphs into that shoulda, coulda, woulda type of thing, it's like Bronnie Ware said, top five regrets of the dying. One of them, the major one, is the fact that people say, I wish I had done the things that I thought of doing.
Mhm.
What talk, you know what, let's just get off of that for a second. But talk to me about Ayurvedic medicine. I understand that you practice that, utilizing different Ayurvedic medical procedures versus kind of Western medicine. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, now just to clarify, I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor. Ayurvedic
right.
doctors are, they go through just as much training as our MD doctors here. Um, but I'm a Ayurvedic lifestyle coach, is basically. So I have a basic knowledge of living an Ayurvedic lifestyle. And what that improves, before I tell you how, what it improves is your sleep, helps regulate your metabolism. So your healthy weight, healthy energy. You don't have these energy ups and downs all through the day. Um, and your hygiene is better. So you're just a cleaner person. So you won't have as much inflammation. And inflammation now they're saying is, uh, depending on what study you read, between 80 and 90% of all disease that we have in our society is caused by inflammation or exacerbated by inflammation. One lecture I heard said 99%. So uh, if you can manage inflammation, then uh, your chances to be healthier. And Ayurveda is all about being in balance with nature, with your personal nature, your constitution that you were born with, and the nature around us. So it's going to bed early, it's eating your biggest meal in the middle of the day, it's staying hydrated, it's using herbs to aid digestion instead of things that don't aid digestion. So most of our antacids are actually anti-digestion, and Ayurveda is all about supporting your digestion. If you're turning off your digestion because you have a stomach ache, long term, that's not how Ayurveda believes it's going to support your health. So I'm not telling anyone to go off their medication.
Right.
Don't take it that far, but we support digestion by using herbs and spices. We support staying in balance by using herbs and spices and eating healthy. And I know that that just sounds, in our society, we are all about what pill can I take? And I'm not saying I don't take any prescriptions, but I try Ayurvedic remedies first because they're natural and more gentle.
That's understandable. It's interesting. I had a guest on last week. This gentleman went from taking 33 pills a day
Mm,
for pain or different medical, issues related. He had a tumor in his back, and instead of helping him to rectify the problem, the doctor he's working on kept just adding more medication. He made a decision to wean down. He had to obviously have a work with a doctor to wean down, but he ended up running. He runs now. He ran 2 marathons, and
wow.
you know, mind you, his back was so terrible at one time. He was taking these pills. Plus, he was getting around on a scooter, you know, to be able to travel and walk around, or transport, basic transport. And it's interesting because the Western way of medicine is, like we said, take a pill, and it gets better. And don't get me wrong, I
Or
am
take a pill, and then to counteract the side effects of that pill, you need this
take
pill.
another pill,
And then to counteract the 2 pills interactions, you need
take
this 3rd
another pill.
pill. So it's yeah,
It becomes a
it's oh,
chain.
yes, exactly. Yeah,
And again, I'm not kicking Western medicine in the back
no,
because look, I
absolutely not.
I've had times where I've had a headache and I'm taking aspirin. It is what it
Mhm.
is. You know, um, also what we have to understand is that the the mind controls the body. And when you have all these other things, like for instance, grief related circumstances can increase that anxiety, can increase that stress,
Yeah.
and then that can convert into the body into things like the inflammation you were talking about.
Yeah, it gets you out of balance. You know,
I mean,
Ayurveda's idea is that if we are in balance, we are free of disease. So before disease shows up, there are 5 different steps that happen in Ayurveda thinking to get you out of balance before disease can even happen. So disease is the 6th stage of imbalance. So think about if you could intervene, anytime in between there. And I just want to say one more thing about Ayurveda. Part of a balanced Ayurvedic lifestyle is meditation. Like it's actually your doctor will prescribe journaling or meditation or all of these things that we don't think of as medicine in the West, but they actually help decrease inflammation.
talk about meditative practices, talk about journaling and being able to express yourself and how those things do counteract the feelings that are associated with a lot of the grief we deal with.
Okay, great question or subject. I love talking about this stuff. So we I mentioned earlier that Ayurveda is all about digestion, right? It's promoting healthy digestion. Well, digestion isn't just something we do with the food we eat. We digest every single exposure we have. We digest everything we breathe in, everything we take in through our 5 senses, even our thoughts need to be digested or processed and released, right? Keep the good, release the waste, release what's not serving you. So these unhealthy emotions that we were talking about earlier that can lead to inflammation, we want to process and release. Just like if you ate a pizza too late at night, you can feel that thing sitting in your stomach, right?
Right.
You really want to process and release that. And if you can't do it first thing in the morning, it might be really uncomfortable and it probably interfered with your sleep. So meditation helps us process what's going on in the mind, the thoughts and emotions. Journaling also helps release emotions. Do you remember how I mentioned earlier that witnessing is one of the things grievers need? Sometimes I just sit and listen to the stories.
Right.
Well, this is a way to do it without someone listening. You can write anything. And I recommend doing it before bed. I know morning pages are really popular, and I think they're great too if you have time to do both. But I think it's best to do it before bed because you have accumulated over the day a bunch of stuff that you need to digest, right? Every conversation you've had, everything you watched on your shows, if you watched the news, all that stuff is stuck in here somewhere as energy, as an emotion. Energies in motion is emotions, right? So if you can journal and say, this upset me, that upset me, or even just write about anything that happened without describing how you feel about it, it's processing, right? It's getting your digestion going, it's out on paper. And then when you go to sleep, sleep is when we do most of our processing in our brain in deep sleep. It's kind of like cleansing, right? Like imagine a tile floor, and during the course of the day, the grout gets all dirty with all the people, all the stepping on that's happened during the day. So at night, when you're in deep sleep, a little scrubbing brush gets all that crumbly junk out of there, and then you wake up and you have fresh mind. So journaling actually helps you get a jump start on that if you do it before bed. So it's all about letting energy flow in and flow out, a constant flow. When things get stuck, that's when we end up overwhelmed. That's when we end up in trauma. That's when we end up inflamed and physically sick.
And what's interesting is all of these methods that you discuss, all these methods that I talk to the people I work with about, there is one major spark in everything. And that's what I often tell people is that you can do the different things, but you need a catalyst in order to allow you to be able to have whatever it is work. And the catalyst is belief. You have to
Mhm.
believe that what you're doing is creating a better version of yourself. There are people that, like you said, they'll meditate and they'll say, that didn't work for me.
Mhm.
Well, no, it didn't work for you because you went into it with the belief that it's not going to work.
Oh, yeah.
So, because you've gone into it feeling that way, you're already telling yourself, you're giving you the negative. It's just like when a person says, this test is so hard, I'm going to fail this test.
Mhm.
Well, the chances of failure become high because your mind has already,
Right.
and the reality is, your mind will accommodate how you believe. So if you believe you're going to fail, the mind's going to do everything it can
Yeah.
to make sure that you fail because it
And,
wants to make sure
you
you're
know,
right.
what you're saying it takes me all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation today, and it's perfect because I just have to hop off in a
Okay,
couple minutes here,
no
to
problem.
teach my 10 o'clock class. It's 10 o'clock where I am. Uh, all the way back to the beginning when we were talking about how do I actually help people in grief, and I offer them an opening to believe what they believe now, but also, is there a possibility that this is also true?
Right.
That's where the and is, right? So that's the very beginning. It's hard to get someone who says meditation doesn't work for me to just sit and change their mind. Yeah, it works for me, right? We just have to drop a little seed, open it just a crack. Try to get them to open their mind or their heart just a little bit to the possibility of something different,
Right. Right.
something different than all the negative parts of grief, right? Open to the possibility of a gift being there.
Well, you know what? First off, I know you got to hop off, but before before anything, how do people find you, Michelle? How can they touch base? Talk, tell them about your books and where they can find it, things of that nature.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, inhabitjoy.com is my website. That's everything's on there, books, meditations, all of that. You can send me an email. Let me know if you want coaching, or I also do a lot of consulting. Just, hey, what book would be good for me, or what program would be good for me to improve whatever it is that you're struggling with. I'm on Instagram, Michelle Ann Collins _. I'm on LinkedIn. Uh, I'm on Facebook, but not a lot. Yeah, so just go to my website, send me an email, let me know how I can help you.
Okay. Well, again, Michelle Collins, we had,
Yeah,
you know, incredible conversation. And thank you for your,
always. I love having time with you.
you know, likewise, likewise. Please do what you have to do. It's again, I wish we had all day, but I already know you're a busy, busy lady. So
Well, we will get together again, and I'll try to make more cushion time for technical difficulties.
no problem at all. Listen, thank you again, Michelle Ann Collins. You know, definitely go to inhabitjoy.com, find out all the different ways that you can take a look at things. She has so many writings, so much information, so much for you to be able to process and use to help you move forward. So again, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, ladies and
Thanks for
gentlemen.
having me.
No problem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking in another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory. Remember, learn to use your grief and transform it into your gift.